Good evening and welcome to Inderes Life Science Night. My name is Antti Siltanen. I'm an equity analyst focused on life science companies. I will start the evening with a short introduction to investing in life science stocks, and after that we have three excellent presentations by Orion Pharma, Herantis Pharma and Aiforia. Each presentation is followed by a Q&A session, so please send your questions via the chat function and we'll forward those to the company representatives. So first a few words about the life science stocks in Finland. There's about a dozen companies that can be regarded as life science companies. There are some pharmaceutical companies like Orion Pharma being one of tonight's presenters, and that's a more mature pharma company. And then we have earlier stage drug development companies, and of those, Herantis Pharma is presenting today. Then we have several health technology or medtech companies, and today we have a pleasure to hear from Aiforia Technologies, a digital pathology company. Looking at all the stocks in the Helsinki Stock Exchange, the company profile is that of early stage small cap companies. So Orion Pharma is clearly the biggest companies of nearly 2 billion in revenues and more than 8 billion in market cap. Then we have a few companies with revenues of approximately 100 million, but most companies are small with revenues from few million to about 20 million euros. The characteristics of these companies are that they are typically commercializing innovations that are stemming from the academia. So new innovations that are bringing safer and more effective treatments to the markets. The market is very strongly regulated by government authorities. This means that the companies have a high burden to prove safety and efficacy of the new treatments and drugs they're bringing to market. This also leads to long timelines for bringing the products to markets. The market is essentially global, and the US is the largest market. So the prices and size of the market in the USA is clearly the biggest. So most companies are primarily commercializing in the US and followed by Europe and Japan and other areas. From a profile perspective, the early stage companies typically have high potential, but they are very risky and unprofitable, and the mature companies are defensive and highly profitable. So in the next slide, I have a little bit more on that. So the graph at the bottom depicts a typical development of revenues over time for life science companies. In the early R&D stage, the companies don't yet have revenues, and the value creation is not really based on current cash flows, but rather reaching value inflection points. So these can be, for example, gaining clinical data on the safety and efficacy of the product, or, for example, receiving an FDA approval to bring the product to market. From a valuation perspective, these stocks are usually narrative-driven, and it's difficult to give fundamental-based valuations to the companies. Cash flows at this stage are of course very negative, and the main risk is proving the concept of the treatment or product in the first place. Then in the early commercial phase, revenues are typically small, and if everything is going well, the revenues are growing very rapidly. At that point, the value creation is very much based on the rate of growth, and valuation can be done by revenue-based multiples, such as EV to sales. Cash flows are still very negative, maybe even more negative compared to the earlier phase, because the bringing products to market requires further investments. And here the key point is to prove the scalability of the business. When we are going to higher revenue levels, the main driver is still high growth and in improving profitability. And for those companies that are turning profitable, valuation is by PE or other earnings multiples, but also revenue-based multiples are relevant here. Cash flows are improving quickly and turning positive, and the key risk is whether the company can maintain growth at scale. And then at mature stage, growth is getting slower, even turning negative. The business are very defensive and profitability is very high. And at this stage, the valuation by earnings multiples is a natural way to go. Cash flows are very, very positive, and the key risk is defending the market against new innovations. So the market, as mentioned, is global and very defensive, and it's supported by strong trends. One of the key trends is aging population. So basically, in developed countries, the elderly population is getting larger, requiring more services to maintain and improve health. There's a constant need of new innovations. There's, in many areas, a big unmet medical need for more safe, more effective treatments and solutions. Also, most developed countries are running on budget deficits, so this means that there's an demand for cost saving and value-adding solutions. And I think we have examples of such solutions today in today's presentations. So the overall growth rate in both pharma side and medical technology is roughly 15%, and it's very predictable. So what does a strong life science company look like? First, it has a value-adding product with market authorization and a strong IPR. Ideally, it's first to market, or it has strong advantages in terms of efficacy, safety, or cost savings. So from today's presentations, Herantis is aiming to be the first to market in their category in Parkinson's disease. And Orion Pharma, I think, is a good example with their leading product Nubeqa. It's not first in class, but it's the best in class and achieving nice results. For an early stage company, it's essential to secure funding, and this is kind of one of the most important points of the business model to enable timely development and getting to market. And even with a great product, companies still need excellent sales and marketing capabilities, and to present a lot of convincing clinical data to convince the users of their solution. A few words on the funding environment. Overall, we need to go back to the previous decade with a very long period of very low interest rates that was increasing liquidity and increasing funding for life science companies. And this culminated in the 2020 and 2021 into when the liquidity boost during the COVID pandemic really resulted in a boom in the market. And this reflects, for example, in the number of IPOs, which in the biotech sector were very, very active during those years. This reversed with the increasing inflation and higher interest rates. And for example, the IPOs and general funding went down since 2022. But we have seen some good signs during this year. So looking at the XBI Biotech Stock Index, this has been sharply appreciating since the Liberation Day in April. And since last summer, the biotech funding seems to have picked up very, very rapidly. So especially in the US, we are seeing a lot of M&As, licensing deals, and the outlook is looking much better than 1 year ago. Also, based on discussions I've had with industry representatives, it seems that there are some positive signs in Europe as well, and picking up of interest from the players. Then looking at evaluating the companies, when we are thinking about more more mature companies, we can rely on earnings multiples such as P or EV to EBIT. And valuating those companies is quite straightforward. Then when we are talking about earlier stage companies, we need to rely on present value of future cash flows, so DCF models basically, and when companies are generating revenue, we can look at the revenue-based multiples. But basically for earlier stage companies, the valuation by definition is inaccurate, and this results in kind of a natural high uncertainty that investors must expect or approve when investing in earlier stage companies. And of course, we can also always look at sector peers to look at relative valuations. The EVS multiples for the Helsinki Stock Exchange companies is roughly 5 at the moment. It means that the market is putting expectations for growth. So those companies that can achieve high growth will probably see very good price appreciation. But if there's lacking growth, the high valuations or relatively high valuations mean that there's also downside for those companies. So kind of to summarize the investment profile for life science investments. The markets are global and defensive. That's a big opportunity for many companies. The R&D that is done over years, regulatory approvals achieved, and market shares won create moats for companies, and these enable high profitability of mature stage companies. And often the capital requirements are also quite low for these companies, and they are able to generate a lot of free cash flow. Many earlier stage companies are very potential as M&A targets, and they also have potential for lucrative licensing agreements. And for those companies that have a strong product, they have a possibility for long-term profitable growth and high customer stickiness. Then on the weakness side, there's binary R&D risk, which can lead to kind of rapid negative situations if, for example, a drug is not proven efficient or safe enough. Market authorization can take time and be expensive processes, and also, as mentioned, upfront funding is needed for companies, possibly for many years. The markets are quite conservative, so going to market may take quite a lot of time, and there's always competition from new innovations. So as a final point, I'd like to take a quick look at the industry trends going forward. In the biopharma side, the new drugs and the M&As and licensing deals are often directed to bispecifics, trispecific antibodies, antibody-drug conjugates, and also platforms that enable generating multiple new drugs. Also, cell and gene therapies are clearly picking up. CAR-T therapies have made a breakthrough, and probably gene editing solutions are a thing of the future. Artificial intelligence is breaking through in medtech and drug discovery. We'll hear more from Aiforia and maybe other companies on this as well. Personalized medicine has been a trend for a long time, and that will continue to be a major trend. Both medtech and pharma companies are looking for biomarkers to improve their solutions, making solutions more personalized and effective by selecting the best patient groups. And also digital health and therapeutics is getting stronger all the time. So I'd like to thank you on my behalf, and next we'll continue with the first presentation from Orion Pharma.
Thank you for the introduction, Antti, and thank you, Inderes, for having Orion here today. Good afternoon. My name is Tuukka Hirvonen. I'm the head of IR here at Orion. And welcome to hear more about how we at Orion are building shareholder value. But let's start with a brief introduction to the company, should there be someone online who is not so familiar with us. So Orion is more than 100-year-old pharma company that has a strong focus and decades of experience and proven track record in innovation and development of new pharmaceutical treatments. Today, as Orionees, we are more than 4,000 in over 35 countries across the world. Financially, we are very solid, and the fact that as a company we are having a positive impact on people's lives is a great source of motivation and inspiration for all at Orion. Orion is a fairly diversified pharma company. We have 5 different business divisions, out of which Innovative Medicines is responsible for the development and commercialization of new treatments. At the moment, the only commercial product in this division is Nubeqa, which our partner Bayer is selling globally. But obviously we have more opportunities in our R&D pipeline, to which I will come back later on during my presentation. In branded products, we have 3 therapy areas, which all have one key product on and around which they are building growth. The growth comes from in-licensing new products or developing new products there, either internally or even acquiring assets there. In the respiratory therapy area, the key product portfolio is the Easyhaler platform. Easyhaler is a dry powder inhaler that Orion has invented, and we have introduced 6 different generic molecules to the device. In the CNS area, the key product is our good old entacapone for the treatment of Parkinson's disease. And finally, in women's health, the core platform is the Divina series, which is a hormone replacement therapy for women suffering from menopausal symptoms. In geographic-wise, this business is mostly focused in Europe and certain Asia-Pacific countries. Then again, our generics and OTC business, that's more regional, focusing on Finland, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe. We have a wide portfolio of products with more than 300 different products in the portfolio. Then we have innovative and generic animal health products, which we are selling directly and also through partners globally. Fermion's most important role is to manufacture the active pharmaceutical ingredients to Orion's current innovative and most important legacy products. Here we are reporting the external sales, so not the internal sales, which we are using to our own purposes. And as you can see from the slide, all of the divisions recorded good growth for the first 9 months of this year, of course with the exception of Fermion, where the external sales was declining due to capacity constraints. The divisions, they are very different, but then again they form a balanced and good entity of which we are very proud of. On this slide we can see our financial development from the past 6 years. I'd like to highlight 2 things here. First of all, in the previous decade, so in the 2010s, Orion faced several losses of exclusivity in our at that time innovative medicines. And that slowed us down, but thanks to our other diversified and stable businesses, we remained on a growth path. However, it is fair to say that the growth was very modest during that difficult time. And now, as we can see, this decade, with the help of Nubeqa and also with the help of the fact that these headwinds coming from the losses of exclusivity are now behind us, we are seeing very healthy growth and also good growth projections for the several years to come. The second thing I want to raise up here are the milestones. They are integral part of our business model, but on the other side, they cause some fluctuations to our figures, especially to the operating profit. But we don't complain, and I don't think that our shareholders do that either. And just as a reminder, on this slide, we are not seeing it, but last week we reported that we will again book one milestone, the size of which is 180 million euros, related to the Nubeqa sales achievements. So this will be booked in Q4 this year, and it will be the last milestone related to our package with Bayer. So from now on, the only income we are getting from Nubeqa will be the royalties, which are also growing currently nicely. Well, how about then growth going forward? We can approach this question through our financial objectives, which we have set for the strategy period 24 to 28. First of all, we aim to grow the top line by more than 8% CAGR and to grow the operating profit faster than the top lines, meaning that we will also be improving our profitability. We want to maintain strong balance sheet and make wise investments, and that's why we are having the equity ratio and return on equity also as a target in our financial objectives. And finally, last but not least, we aim to pay annually increasing dividend with sustainable payout ratio. These objectives give us a certain framework within which we can then determine how much we can, for instance, utilize money in the R&D section of the company. Well, why invest in Orion then? We can split this question in key themes, out of which growth is clearly the most important one. We are currently enjoying very nice growth with Nubeqa and supported by other businesses, which are all growing and profitable. In the longer term, of course, in innovative business, we need to have a robust pipeline out of which we then want to introduce new products and also maintain the good growth momentum in the years to come. As I said previously, we have these many businesses which are we kind of balance each other. We know that in the innovative side, it's more risky, but then again, the rewards are higher. And then again, in the so-called base business, it's more, how to say, boring, but boring is good in this sense, that it's more stable and then bringing balance to the entity. But of course, it is fair to say that the base businesses cannot really be such a growth driver for the company as the innovative medicines are. And like I said, we are investing quite a lot to new innovation so that we would have the new growth drivers also in the future. And we have a good track record on doing that. And then again, dividends, as said, they are an important part of our equity story and especially for the long-term owners. Then if we talk about a little bit about the capital allocation priorities, familiar themes. So the two priorities are internal R&D, so innovation, and secondly also we want to take care of the owners and long-term investors in the form of dividend. On top of that, of course, we are investing in building and maintaining our capacity. I mentioned that in-licensing is something that we are doing all the time, especially in the generics division, but also in other businesses, and also asset acquisitions if there's a good opportunity there. And finally, also M&As are in the playbook. However, it's fair to say that we are not looking for any kind of big transformational M&A. It's more like looking for bolt-on smaller acquisitions that would bring some strategic capabilities or know-how to the company. For instance, if we want to expand to a new geographic territory, doing that through an acquisition could be one option. Then to the clinical development pipeline. If we start from the top, we still have 2 phase 3 trials ongoing with darolutamide or Nubeqa together with Bayer, and those trials are aiming to expand the indications in prostate cancer. The first trial, ARASTEP, is due to read out in 2027, and then the second one, DASL-HiCap, which is targeting the very early stage of prostate cancer, that's due to read out in 2028. Then moving on to our next oncology molecule, opevesostat, which we have completely licensed out to US Merck or MSD. MSD is currently conducting 2 phase 3 trials in metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. And it's good to bear in mind at this point that this indication is something that is not cannibalizing Nubeqa. So Nubeqa has never been approved for this indication, and there are no ongoing trials aiming to get Nubeqa approved in this indication. MSD is having 2 trials. One is targeting or giving opevesostat to the patients as a second or third line treatment, meaning that the patients have first received something else, and if that doesn't work, then they are giving opevesostat. And the other trial then again is testing opevesostat as a first-line treatment, meaning that whenever patients proceed to this stage, they are immediately given opevesostat. Additionally, MSD is having 1 phase 2 program in metastatic prostate cancer in combination with other oncology products. This trial is obviously aiming to then offer doctors more treatment options in the future should opevesostat be approved for treatment of this disease. And finally, with opevesostat, MSD started earlier this summer a phase 2 program in several women's cancers, and that trial is estimated to read out in late 2027. Then there's 1 cardiovascular program in the pipeline. There, our partner in the US, Tenax Therapeutics, is developing Orion's old innovation, levosimendan, which is familiar from the product Simdax, which was for acute decompensated heart failure. And now Tenax is developing that molecule for the treatment of pulmonary hypertension with heart failure. They have 1 phase 3 trial ongoing, which is due to read out second half next year. But Tenax has already said that this trial alone is not likely to be enough to file, and that's why they have announced that they are planning to start another phase 3 trial by the end of this year. And in these partnerships, typically Orion's income is or are the royalties from partners' sales, and typically there's also milestone package included in the agreement. Like I mentioned earlier, with Bayer, we have exhausted and received all the possible milestones from that contract. With MSD, we have a significant milestone package up to $1.6 billion, and then with Tenax, we have a smaller package. Typically, the milestones are related to achievements in R&D, regulatory processes, or then commercial achievements. Finally, on the bottom of this list is 1 molecule that is still completely in Orion's hands, so ODM-212, our TEAD inhibitor for the treatment of solid tumors. We have said already earlier that currently we are preparing to start a phase 2 program in 2026, so next year. And why I'm talking about the program is the fact that this mechanism of action, we see potential in several different indications, and that's why we will be starting several trials, or at least several arms in the trials next year. ODM-212 could work as a monotherapy, so alone, especially in certain rare cancers, but also in combinations with other products, and there we may have even bigger indications targeted. And that's not all. Obviously, we've been building our research pipeline for the past many years. It's growing. And actually earlier this year in our Capital Markets Day, we announced that we are now having Orion's first biologic products approaching the clinical development phase. And in accordance with our Q3 report, we stated that next year, so in 2026, we aim to take at least 1 of those biologics to the clinical stages. And going forward, the aim is that we should be able to feed the clinical development pipeline with our own internal research in a way that we should have at least 1 new program to the clinical phase each and every year. And with this, I'd like to conclude my intro or presentation, and then I guess next we will have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tuukka, and please have a seat for the Q&A. So let's start with your number 1 earnings driver, Nubeqa. You have ongoing trials, so could you talk a little bit about what those trials are, and if they are successful, how they will expand the indications and grow the market for Nubeqa in the future?
Sure, good question. So first of all, Nubeqa is currently approved in 2 indications. So non-metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. One could say that it's kind of the mid phases of prostate cancer. And then in metastatic hormone-sensitive prostate cancer, a little later phase. Now the ongoing trials, first of all, the ARASTEP trial, that's targeting PCR, meaning biochemical recurrence stage, which is a step earlier from the non-metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer. So we are trying to expand even earlier in the treatment paradigm. And then again, the other DASL-HiCaP, it's targeting even earlier stages, so neoadjuvant setting of prostate cancer, so very early stage of prostate cancer. So if we think about the treatment paradigm, if both of these trials are successful, then we would cover the whole paradigm with Nubeqa, with the exception of the very late stage, so the metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. But then again, there we have opevesostat with MSD. So if that's successful, then Orion products could assess the whole treatment paradigm of prostate cancer. And when it comes to the potential, well, we have left that commenting to our partner Bayer, who has previously said that Nubeqa should have potential to exceed 3 billion euro in market sales, and that should include also the new indications there. However, having said that, constantly they've been commenting in public that actually the development has been even better than they initially expected. So we'll see what happens there.
And this number was given several years ago.
22, in February 22.
Yes. Okay, and still about Nubeqa, it's an IPR product and there's a loss of exclusivity. So can you talk a little bit about that? So how long will the royalties run?
Yes, good question. So as you know, in pharma, typically we then refer to the matter of essence, or molecule patent here. So the molecule patent will expire in US in 2033, and then in rest of the big markets, EU, Japan, Canada in 2035. So there should be still plenty of years to come before then generic competition could start. And you ask about the royalties. Well, we haven't disclosed the details, but we have said that the royalty income is not related to the loss of exclusivity, but it's related to the start of generic competition.
Okay, and for the new indications, do you have possibilities to expand beyond those years that you mentioned?
As far as I'm concerned, unfortunately not.
Good. Okay, you already mentioned opevesostat for the late stage, and this is your maybe then in your pipeline the most developed and most late stage indications. So how is the market for that drug compared to Nubeqa?
Well, again, here we should leave the market commenting to our partner MSD. Well, obviously, if we think about our great partner, they are a big pharma company. We all know the challenges they may be facing ahead, and that's why they are active in licensing and getting something new. And if we think about the upfront payment, $290 million they paid us in summer 22 when we made the deal. And if you look at the scope of trials they are conducting in various indications, I think that indicates that they are not really after so-called little fish. So the kind of headwinds they are facing, they need to have several big products in the pipeline to compensate that.
And I guess for opevesostat as a phase 3 asset, the probability of success is statistically something like 50 to 60%, roughly. When will we learn about the top-line results and get hard data on whether this can be a drug or not?
Currently, the estimated readouts for these trials, 2 phase 3 trials, they are in 28.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Then there's a question on achieving sales targets. So what do you think are the biggest risks that you may not achieve the sales target?
Well, it's pretty obvious that, like I said in the presentation, that the growth currently clearly is driven by Nubeqa. So if something would happen on that front, then obviously that would be a risk. But if we look at the growth rates currently and what our partner is publicly stating about the compound, that shouldn't be any immediate risk at least.
Yes, and I think the most recent sales numbers from Bayer are promising, I think. Okay. So then recently or last year and this year you stopped development of two drugs that are kind of mid stage in development. So what is your plan on kind of filling that phase 2 area? Are you looking for M&As in licensing or how do you plan to fill up that space after opevesostat?
Yeah, it's a good question. Since currently we have a lot in phase 3 and then in earlier phases, but phase 2 is currently a bit empty. Well, first of all, next year, as said, we will have several trials or study arms with ODM-212 in phase 2. But of course, you know that's only one kind of bet with 212. So obviously we are all the time looking for opportunities, whether they be approaching clinical phases, phase 1, maybe even phase 2 compounds, but more likely maybe phase 2 ready compounds.
And I guess this is also a pricing issue that phase 2 or phase 3 ready are more expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so strategically you're focused on oncology and pain, but if you look at the pipeline, it's very much oncology focused. So how would you comment on this balance? Do you plan to bring a lot of pain indications and assets to your pipeline?
Well, currently it's very much oncology heavy, and that will be the case also going forward. Currently we don't have anything on clinical development phases, but we do have programs in the research phase targeting pain. But it's fair to say that the split is maybe 30-70, even 80-20. So more of the programs are in oncology. But pain is still there, but with the current stages, it's still a few years until we can get something from our internal research pipeline to the clinics.
So clearly oncology driven for now.
For the time being, that's
yes.
right.
You mentioned bringing biologics to clinical development quite soon. I wonder if you could comment on your current assets, Nubeqa and opevesostat, are small molecules. Maybe that's a little bit against the industry trend. So are there some kind of historical reasons or some other reasons that you have been quite small molecule focused until now?
Well, obviously it's history related. The science has been earlier, but actually the biologics is not a very new thing to us. We started to more look into that area and invest in that area already almost a decade ago. But as you know, in this business, the cycles are very long. And now finally we are approaching the stage that we could bring them to clinic. But it's fairly obvious that this is the direction where pharma companies and the industry is going. If you look at the top 10 pharmaceuticals from the whole world, I guess that nowadays more than half of those are already biologics. So that's clearly the future, and obviously we want to be there creating the future.
One thing that's a little bit maybe surprising in your pipeline is the CAR T product. For reference, this is a very different type of drug, a cell therapy, and you maybe don't have so much experience on these. So can you talk a little bit about why do you trust that it's a good idea to bring a very different type of product into clinical development?
Yeah. A fair question, and we at Orion, we have never kind of been scared of challenges. And of course, it's fair to say that we are not the best experts in every area. And that's why we are having a great network of great partners with whom we are doing the research. So there's academia, there are biotechs, clinics, and so forth. So in this specific case, yes, we have certain know-how there, but then we are combining our minds with partners and that way. trying to bring that molecule forward.
Okay, so final question for you. This year, well, the US market is the most important one, high prices and large market. And there's been a lot of changes this year, tariffs and other changes. So what have been the tangible effects on Orion so far, and what do you foresee for the future and next year?
Tangible so far, none. There's been a lot of talk, but nothing tangible, and still there are a lot of uncertainties related to the tariffs. So currently the situation, as far as we understand it, is that for European or EU pharma companies, the tariffs, they are capped at 15%. But for the time being, based on our networks and several public sources, the tariffs seem to be paused because, there are these Section 232 negotiations and MFN, so most favored nations negotiations ongoing. So at least to our current understanding, the tariffs are not yet implemented, even though they are capped to 15%. Then again comes the what's the impact to us? Well, obviously we are most exposed through Nubeqa. We are not having our own sales presence in the US, so our products are imported through partners there, and Bayer is importing Nubeqa there. However, according to our agreement, should there be any tariffs, we will be sharing the impact with the same ratio as we are sharing, for instance, R&D costs for the time being. So if there are tariffs, there will be impact on Orion, but the magnitude, that's still unclear because there are lots of details that are not yet certain. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that front.
And some pharma companies have been making deals with the US government, but regarding Nubeqa, I guess this is then Bayer's decision.
They are importing that, but that would be then Bayer's job to do those negotiations if that happens.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the Q&A.
Thank you.
And next we'll continue with Aiforia.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So my name is Jukka Tapaninen. I'm Aiforia's CEO. And as many of you know the company already, so I keep it very brief on this side. But Aiforia is a plus 10-year-old company. We started back in 2015 to develop deep learning-based AI solution for pathologists so that they can build their own AI models and they use it in a research. And that was the first phase of the company, I would say. So building the core of the technology, so really prove that the technology works, because it's really difficult area on kind of image analysis where we try to find very small details and features from a very large picture file. So we got the scientific proof, a lot of scientific publications coming out, a lot of users from different parts of the world. And in 2020, so we decided to do a little bit a strategic pivot in a way, so that we started to focus on a clinical part of the market, and that was for an obvious reason. So there's big volumes and need for automation, and of course we have the technology, or had the technology, so that we could leverage on the clinical side. And at that point we started to build the offering, so clinically and CE-IVD mark solutions for European market, and then the LTD process for the US market. So, but we started to build a portfolio. And our aim at that point of time was to get to 6 different regulatory approved models in the market, plus also at the same time getting the first reference customers in place. And so first 5 years building up the technology, and then building up the product, so to speak, and also the referenceable customers. And that's the time where we are at the moment, so that we are now moving to a phase that we really start focusing on scaling up the business. But so far we've been moving forward as planned, and I come back to those things on a little bit more details. The market is large, so there's a big transformation from traditional way of doing things using a microscopes to a digital pathology. This transformation is already kind of on its way. So and there's a clear reasons why. So there's a large demand in the market. So there's a 3 billion glass plates, those kind of samples that needs to be diagnosed, and at the same time, so the number of pathologists has been remaining more or less the same. So there's a growing gap between the demand and the resources. And clearly the automation is there, the digital scanners, laboratory information systems, and then AI, which is driving this market forward. And I have to say that clearly we are in a phase now so that actually there's a lot of kind of a different software and hardware components in that environment. So and none of them are sold without a kind of a good AI story. So we are, as a Aiforia, so really in the right spot in that market. And I have one example that I've been lately using to concrete this demand. So I was meeting a few weeks back a customer in Italy, a region, hospital region with the plus 10 million people. And I was asking, so why did you choose Aiforia? What was the main reason and the driver in this case? And it was really clear. So they had 408 pathologists, and 109 is kind of retiring in the next 2 or 3 years, and only 9 new ones coming in. So and what they want to achieve with kind of adapting the digital pathology and AI is really to kind of improve the efficiency of the operation. So and of course being able to kind of do the diagnosis what they need to do. So but and this is happening in many places in Europe and in the US and the rest of the world as well. So that lack of resources, high demand on a kind of a diagnosing those cancer cases in the hospitals and clinics. Aiforia's role in this process is quite good because, as I said, so it's a large ecosystem and different kind of products and software products and hardware products are provided. So and we have a good integration with all of those. So you need to digitize the images, you need to share the images, you need to store the images. All of those really important. And in this case, so Aiforia's role is to actually be core of this process because we understand what's on those samples. So we show the picture, we put the different color layers, show the areas that there might be some issues. But top of that, so we do a little bit more than most of the competition does. Most of the competition actually stops on this heat map level, so to speak, and we go one step deeper. That we do the quantitative analysis. We calculate all the kind of cells and give it the percentages and the distances and whatever is needed to do the diagnosis. And top of that, so we also populate the ready-made report. So we actually automate with the good quality the work that the pathologist who's diagnosing those cancer cases actually doing. And we operate still on a kind of research side as well. Good example was the previous presenter and their company Orion, so it's a good customer for us on a research side. But then clearly, so we are putting a lot of effort on focusing on a clinical market, so big volumes, larger kind of deal sizes, and that's where we kind of expect that the revenue growth in the next coming years is really coming from. And there are two things I would say, so the sales success and then the offering what we have. And the offering is really competitive. So we've been able to win 100% of all the tenders that we've been participating. So that's a good proof point that actually the product is reliable and providing the information that is needed for the diagnosis. But we also have another point of view, so that we kind of, when we started to build, so we think from the user's point of view, like the breast cancer. So typically, so when you do the breast cancer diagnosis, so you have a so-called breast panel containing multiple topics that they need to kind of diagnose. And we have an AI model for all of those. So we can do the real automation, because the most of the competition is maybe doing one of or two of those areas, and the rest needs to be done manually. So, but we have a kind of a way of building and looking at the topics so that we do the full suite. So, and when we did the IPO 4 years ago, we said that we come out with the 6 certified models. Now we have 10, so we are now covering about 60% of the typical clinical workflow, and aim is to grow to up to 80% in the next coming years. So the offering is good, and I would say that, okay, so it's the best in the market, and there are real proof points on that. So what makes us different? So I spoke a little bit about the AI and technology leadership, coming out with those nice product offerings. The other thing is that we are in a software business, and so we've been using the core technology what we had, now building products, and now the products are in a phase so that the quality is really good, accepted by the end customers, not just kind of a regulatory approved, but really kind of a real life customers using it and saying so that this is the really good, close to perfect. And now we have packaged the features, and we have been streamlining the delivery kind of methods as well, so that we can start scaling up the business as real software company. Interoperability, absolutely really important, so that we support all the large kind of a big cloud providers and have done already integrations. We have done integrations with all the major scanner manufacturers and LIS systems and image management systems, so that that's really important, because you are not there alone. And of course, certification on the science side and the security side is really kind of a key thing, so that you are enabled to sell in the target group that we are selling. So these are the numbers from first half of year this year. So, and order book was growing nicely. So our revenue, overall revenue growth was quite modest, but it was still a growth. But also here you need to look at the details, because we've been shifting the focus on building up the clinical market, and the clinical business was growing 60%. Our research was a little bit declining, and there was good reasons for that. But really the kind of a future and a growth comes from the clinical, so, and that's where we are focusing on. We got those certifications in place, and we've been strengthening the partnerships and collaborations in this business, so that, okay, now when we are entering the scaling up phase, so that we can get more feet on the street, so, and really capture the opportunity in the market. But just wanted to show some of the customers, and this is really important. On the one hand, so we have the kind of a leading portfolio of solutions, really successful on that. And on the other hand, so we have the leading hospitals of the world using our solution. Mayo Clinic was, of course, a customer already in 2021, but since that we've been gaining new names, and some of them we have closed the deals, some of them we have already delivered, and it's in a production, and some of them are in a backlog. So and like the Lombardia, so that's a huge deal. So we closed it almost a year ago. And delivery is starting now. So we haven't recognized any of that deal in our revenue yet, but of course it's coming. So, but it's there. So it's a 10.5 million people region, 32 hospitals, and it's now starting to be in a delivery phase. So then another Italian example is a Veneto region. So it's already delivered. So, and that was the reason that we actually got additional kind of customers in Italy. So we have 7 out of the 15 hospital regions there. So, but the quote from Lombardia was that they say that they want to have exactly the same setup blueprint that Veneto is having, because they know that it's working. So that was the first reference cell, and also working in other regions. So the other big one is Paris and France overall. And Paris hospital region was and is the biggest one in Europe, 38 hospitals. We delivered now the prostate models in the 2 hospitals, and the lead pathologist from that hospital chain said that, okay, so now the solution is near perfect, and they are really happy on using our prostate solution. So that gives us an upsell opportunity inside that organization. Additional 9 AI models plus additional 36 hospitals. But another French example is the Institut Curie. So it's part of the Unique Cancer Group, which is 19 hospitals. Good name. We won it from the Israeli competitor, so who has been there for giving a solution for 3 years. And when was the time coming? So the time came that Curie was buying solution for production in a real life, so they chose us. So it was a nice win for us, and also key opinion leaders from that institute as well supporting us. And then the channel. So as I said, now having a company in a different phases, developing the core technology, developing the offering, getting the first flagship hospitals in. So now we focus on scaling up the business. So we allocate internally the resources a little bit differently, more investment on the sales, and but then the partnership network. So this is one example. Siemens, European player, and Siemens partnership is they chose us because they have their own offering. So they have their own picture and archiving system, and they needed to have an AI. They chose Aiforia, and we are now part of the Siemens' price list. And we've been training their sales teams in Europe, and now going country by country, finding opportunities. But I can say that, okay, so the first closing from this partnership is happening before end of the year. So it's really kind of started nicely. So and of course we have a high expectation so that this will be a really good partnership for Siemens and good partnership for us as well. Then I talk about a little bit about the regulation. So because this is important, sometimes as this is a new market, somebody thinks that there's a huge amount of a competition because somebody's making an algorithm for some topic. But when you actually go to a clinical side of the business, so then you need to have this regulatory part sorted out really well. And then of course the other things so that you are a real company, so being able to deliver, being able to kind of integrate with all the surrounding systems, and then of course upgrade and maintain the offering what we have. But the IVDR was kind of a lengthy process for us. It's done, so the company has been gone through this process, and now we can quicker bring market new AI solutions under this regulation. So it's still called CE IVD, but under the IVDR regulation. But this is something that at least protects the market a little bit. But when I'm sure there will be competition coming up. But as a company, so we are in a real nice position now with the leading offering plus the reference customers. And then on a strategy, quickly, so that, okay, so we are focusing now on capturing the opportunity in the biggest markets in Europe, maintaining and growing the US market, and then opportunistically going after customers in the rest of the world. So, but we try to get a focus on a certain products, focus on a certain markets, and really capturing the commercial opportunity out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Jukka, and please have a seat for the Q&A. So let's start with the big picture question. You have been with Aiforia for several years and building the business. So what have been the biggest surprises and positive and negative surprises for you during the time building the business?
Well, I've been actually almost from the beginning because I was one of the early investors back in 2015 and a board member in the beginning. So of course, so the talent what we have in a company is a big thing. So that we've been building something unique, really competitive, top of the world. So when people are talking about the AI, so we actually have and people typically talk about the NVIDIA and all the infrastructure stuff related to that, but what drives the AI forward is the application, so that brings some real value for the kind of end customers. So and that business we are in. So I think that's the technology, so competence of the Aiforia team, and then the market is also interesting because and that's also in a positive and negative. So how quickly the transformation is happening there, but you still have a lot of opinion leaders and bigger organizations, so who are actually willing to kind of take these things forward. So that's on a positive side. And then maybe that, okay, it is not easy to make such a solution so that, okay, so it actually gets in a level so that it's accepted by the end users, because now we are talking about very critical element in that process. So you are supporting the diagnostic decision making, and that leads to kind of a treatment decision or medication for the patient, so and a patient outcome. So in a way, so you cannot be kind of light on that. So you need to do it correctly, and building a solution that actually can do the same as the pathologists are doing, or doing it a little bit better or kind of faster. So then it's a big challenge, but so we've been able to sort it out.
So on a practical level, I understand you have been winning contracts recently. So what is the customer feedback? Why are you succeeding? What are they telling you?
Well, I think it's the quality. So you need to be, of course, when you sell to kind of a big organization, so you need to convince the user. And in this case, so it's really critical because if they don't trust that the AI can deliver right results, so then forget the whole thing. But that's one area. So we managed to do that quite nicely. And on the offering side, as I explained, so there's this heat map area so that we show the picture, and that's as many companies are doing. But we've been able to kind of bring the automation in a level that, so it's really a kind of a support tool for the diagnostic decision. So you get the information, so then you review that everything is correct, you click, and then you have a ready-made reports, so that it's really a solution to sort out, give the efficiency, give the kind of quality on a diagnosis. So that's the one thing. So and then the other parts are that you need to kind of convince the IT and that part, because you are implementing a new kind of a solution in that type of environment. So this is really important. And the last part is that, okay, so you have the C-level and budget kind of decision makers as well covered, so that there's a kind of a certain ROI on doing this whole thing.
The AI solution is part of an ecosystem, if you will. Or you have scanners and other parts. So can you talk a little bit more about what's the status of building that ecosystem and integrating Aiforia into that? And is it ready, or what kind of work do you need to do or are currently doing?
Well, we have the APIs, of course, that you can connect to all the surrounding systems, but as I said, so we are, even though we are a tiny company comparing to many of our partners, so there's a Hologic and there's a Roche and there's many others, but I would claim so that nobody sells anything without an AI story, at least. Whether they buy the AI at the same time, that's other question. So, but without a kind of AI on their kind of a story, so they are not able to sell anything. And now the integration, so we have done with the Leica interoperability on a scanner side. We work with the Philips, FimLab cases with Philips. There's a Hamamatsu, 3D Histech, all the kind of main scanner manufacturers who are providing a clinical kind of great scanners. So we have an integration done. So we have developed and delivered already with Amazon, Google, and so all the kind of a big cloud providers. So in that sense, so that integration is done. So it's not the problem at all for us.
I think you previously mentioned that the scanners were a bottleneck a little bit. Is this still the case, or has it developed?
Well, yeah, to be frank, so yes. So like the first European big case for us was a Veneto region. So 5.5 million people, 12 hospitals, and now everything is implemented. So but and we started about 2.5 years ago, and now we are discussing about kind of a next step of the process, so that they continue to kind of a next 3 years. But at the same time, so they have not been able to get the scanners in place. So they get it now in January. So but at least the region, the hospital region, is not worried. So they said, okay, so when we get the scanners, everything is there, and the volume goes up. For us, maybe kind of we can get more revenues when the volume is going up. So, but those type of things are, for sure, kind of important.
You already mentioned the Siemens Healthineers collaboration, so but maybe it's worth repeating. So, what kind of expectations do you have for next year?
Well, commercially, so probably I should not give any numbers, but I expect that so there will be kind of good number of new opportunities coming up, and there are big kind of RFEs that we already been jointly kind of responding to, and a partner like Siemens really kind of as a bigger company, so of course can open up a lot of doors, and on the AI side, so we can of course support their kind of a success as well nicely.
Yeah. You recently started a subsidiary in France, so can you talk a little bit about the importance of that, and do you see need for other subsidiaries in some other countries to kind of build the business?
Yeah, so we've been kind of fine-tuning the playbook, so how we are going from a country by country. I think France is a good example, so we have a local salesperson, local pre-salesperson, so we have a delivery capabilities in a country, we have a legal entity, and we find out so that's really important. So because they want to buy from a French company, there are no kind of any companies from France who could compete with us. So thanks to the Paris hospital region and a support from their leadership, so we are recognized as a company who's been able to deliver AI solution to a French hospital. So we are part now in the kind of public sector buying portal, so that they can actually kind of buy, the other hospitals can buy us without tendering process. And we have one city of Nantes, and there's multiple other cities in a pipeline. So I think the next big kind of a revenue is coming from the French market. So Business Finland supported us nicely, getting some early connections. Business France is very excited to kind of get us in France. We got the Jean Cresson award a couple of weeks back as a kind of attractive foreign company entering in France. So we try to position ourselves as a local company, because it's really important on a selling perspective as well. But and I can also open up one additional thing, why France is moving forward nicely. So the public sector is supporting hospitals to getting the AI in the next first 2 years. So they are kind of funding that activity, because one challenge is that because it's a new thing, so it's not in a hospital budget. So how to kind of make that happen? In France, the public sector took an initiative, and they have a funding mechanism in place so that the hospitals can do the initial AI purchase. So that's why we think it's really important. We have a team in place. We have already qualified to be a kind of a leading AI company on that market. So and now we need to capture the opportunity.
Yeah, so France is developing well, and you have good experiences, so possibly in other countries in the future as well.
Absolutely. Okay, you could say that we have a legal entity in the US, we have a team in the US, and we just recently kind of hire additional sales capacity there, so that we still kind of want to focus on a US, and but that's a one which is working nicely. So France, big opportunity. The model what we put in place seems to be working. Next big things, decisions are, what do we do with the German-speaking countries? Italy, France, we cover quite nicely with the partnerships, and the Nordics, so we have a good kind of position as well. In a way, so but those bigger markets, so we need to probably have a legal entity and localized teams as well.
Yes, so it seems that things are moving forward in Europe, and the US is your other main area. So can you talk a little bit about the US market, and what will it take to kind of speed things up there?
Well, there was a good reason. So we did the strategy exercise in the summertime, and we decided to capture the opportunity in Europe. And there was a good reason. One is going back to the scanners. Scanner penetration is almost double in Europe compared to the US. So this is one of the areas that the US is actually a little bit behind. They are behind on having these solutions, and they are behind on digitizing the laboratories and hospitals. And but we follow up that. So there's a really kind of an interesting large organization to kind of work with in the US, and we do exactly that, but in a big way. So I think Europe is now surprisingly maybe, but okay, moving faster than in the US in this phase.
Yeah. What's the role of FDA here, kind of developing that landscape and environment?
Yeah, so you can sell it in the US with the LTD, so laboratory developed test process, so that the hospitals are qualifying themselves, so that's working okay. Challenge with the FDA, so and we started, by the way, a process with them, so and we know how to do it and what does it cost, but they call it as a pixel pathway, so that you need to have a scanner, the viewer, the screen, and AI in the same kind of validation. And if one of the components is changing after that, let's say that scanner is coming obsolete, so does your FDA approval for the AI. So until they kind of unbundle that pixel pathway, so it doesn't really make sense to kind of do it. A couple of competitors have done some kind of FDA products, but they have never sold any because they've been just kind of doing something from a marketing perspective. So it's good to have a FDA approval. But we think that okay, once we do it, and we will do it, so that so then it's a solution that you can actually sell in a volume in a market. But now our breast cancer and prostate cancer models are in a really good shape, so that okay, those are the first products that we can start scaling up. So and then there are multiple others coming. So, but yeah.
Question into the future, if you can and want to comment on. Now it's of course important for you to scale the current products, but if we think about kind of the next generation of products, what will it look like? Will it be like incremental improvement or something kind of next level solutions?
Okay, very good question. So that first of all, so we've been developing the core technology. We have a so-called foundation model, so which speed up our own development process with the better quality. So that's a positive thing on the technology side. The other thing is that now when everything is digitized, and we have already kind of a prognostic model so that we can predict the patient outcome. So Mayo Clinic did that with us, having the AI-driven results plus the patient 8,000 patient cases, and now they can predict the patient outcome and make the treatment decision based on that. So that's the future. The other thing, we have already approached proactively by a couple of very large pharma companies. They want to do a companion diagnostic solution together with us, meaning that okay, so you need to drive the results, the diagnosis with AI, and based on that, you can give certain treatment or medication to the patient. So, but those are coming in the future. So I'm not so far away, but first we want to get, as we've been developing a long time, now we want to kind of monetize and capture the opportunity on selling what we have. So that's the near future, and at the same time, on a parallel, of course, we kind of look at the future things as well.
Okay, let's finish with a pragmatic question about your cash flow development, and when do you expect to turn cash flow positive?
Well, so we've been saying so that 27 so should be positive. So and that was and please everybody in the audience keep in mind so that when we did the IPO, so we said that okay, so we built this portfolio of products, we get the flagship hospitals in a way in place. We start kind of then scaling up the business, and we've been moving forward as we've been planning to do, but it has been in the investment phase. And we said that okay, on a 27, so that's the aim to be kind of on a positive side, and we still believe that okay, that's the case.
Thank you very much for the discussion and presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, and let's continue with Herantis Pharma drug development for Parkinson's disease.
Good evening. My name is Antti Vuolanto. I'm the CEO of Herantis Pharma. So Herantis, our ambition is to be the first company developing disease-modifying therapy for Parkinson's disease, so to stop the progression of the disease. Herantis is a public company listed here in Finland, in Helsinki First North. So the necessary forward-looking statements and then going into the actual topic. So our lead asset called HER-096 is a small peptide that is derived from a neurotrophic factor called CDNF, or cerebral dopamine neurotrophic factor. With HER-096, based on the data that we have from preclinical settings, we can protect the dopamine neurons from further degeneration, and we can also support their functional restoration. With the peptide HER-096, we can also have very efficient brain penetration. So the program is currently just finalized phase 1. So we had 2 phase 1 studies, phase 1A and phase 1B, where we have established very solid safety data. We have shown very efficient brain penetration. We have been able to select the dose for phase 2. We are still waiting for the biomarker data from the Parkinson's patients from the phase 1B to be reported by mid-January next year. And on a high level, the summary for the next steps would be to find a development partner and or financing to conduct a phase 2 efficacy trial in Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease is a disease of degeneration of dopaminergic neurons responsible of controlling movements. The underlying reason for the degeneration and eventual cell death is not known. However, a lot of related to the pathology on the neuronal level is actually known. However, the current treatments which exist, they can treat the symptoms, so they can deliver more dopamine into the region in one way or the other, and in a way affect the symptoms. However, they cannot affect the disease progression at all. So basically, when a patient gets the diagnosis, they already at that stage know that, okay, my symptoms can be treated for some period of time. It can be longer, it can be shorter, but there will be a period of time when the quality of life of the patients will start deteriorating, and there is nothing that the current treatments can do for that. And that is, of course, something that we want to change at Herantis Pharma. So there is a high unmet clinical need, and of course it means that there is also a huge market. So it has been estimated by Parkinson's News Today in the springtime that the management of Parkinson's disease, the annual cost globally is over $250 billion. The drug market size currently is between $5 and $6 billion. However, this is estimated to double to $13 billion by 2033. Currently, there are 10 to 12 million patients. It has been estimated that the number will double until the year 2050. So we have a huge unmet clinical need. There is huge market, and we definitely want to be, if not the first one, at least among the first ones to address this. So how we do this? As mentioned, the lead compound HER-096 is based on CDNF. And CDNF was actually the starting point of the company over 15 years ago. So we have a very long experience with the same biology. So we have some key evidence from CDNF that really makes us enthusiastic about the opportunities in Parkinson's disease. Now, what you see on this slide is data from a preclinical study with non-human primates who had induced Parkinson's-like pathology. And you see 2 like images having some staining, and these represent staining images from these animals and from the region where these neurons are located. On the left-hand side, the placebo one, there, of course, the patient, the animals have been treated with placebo infusions for 3 months, and on the right hand with CDNF. And you don't need to be an expert seeing that with the CDNF treated, you see much more intense dark coloring, and the dark coloring represents the dopaminergic neurons and their connections to other neurons. So by naked eye, you can see that yes, we have been able to induce neurorestoration with CDNF that actually coincided with improved motor symptoms and non-motor symptoms. Based on these great results, we did also a clinical study with intracranial administration of CDNF. And among these 17 fairly advanced Parkinson's patients, we actually were able to show several individual subjects that showed signals of clinical improvements or biological responses. For example, in the graph that represents one patient who was first 6 months on the placebo, then 6 months on the active CDNF treatment, and then in follow-up period. The solid line represents the motor scores, the clinical assessment of the motor functions, and during the placebo period, it was rather stable. Switching to active CDNF treatment, we see a decline, which means improvement, then there is another line, dashed line, which is the standard of care treatment dose. And as you can see, at the same time when the CDNF kicked in and we see an improvement, also the medication had to be in a way lowered. And this is of course an indication that the natural dopamine production by the neurons had been in a way increased by CDNF administration. Of course, great results, but the challenge was the intracranial administration. And that's why we developed HER96. That has exactly the same mechanism of action, but we can use subcutaneous administration. So basically, HER96 fully captures the activity. It mimics the active site or the binding site of CDNF protein into its pathway that CDNF controls naturally, which is called unfolded protein response pathway. So CDNF is a natural protein in humans and is known to promote the neuronal cell survival and functional recovery, and that's its normal biological function. So with HER96, we can do the same. So we can reduce the cell stress, we can reduce protein misfolding, and we can reduce neuroinflammation. So we can protect the dopamine neurons from degeneration and support their functional restoration. I mentioned that no one knows what triggers the pathology. However, we know a lot what is going on the neuronal level. And the degeneration of the neurons is driven by a vicious cycle that is composed of accumulation of toxic alpha-synuclein aggregates, cell stress or ER stress, and neuroinflammation, which is also driven by ER stress. And all of this results in the degeneration of the dopaminergic neuron, resulting in decreased dopamine secretion and movement disorder. And when this vicious cycle continues, eventually the dopaminergic neuron dies. However, with HER96 administration, we can break down this vicious cycle. And we are actually hitting two objects at the same time. So we are hitting the unfolded protein response pathway simultaneously in the neurons, but also in the glial cells responsible of the neuroinflammation. So we can normalize a very basic pathway, the target pathway, unfolded protein response pathway, and thereby normalize the function of the dopaminergic neuron and increase the dopamine secretion. And all of this we have shown in preclinical settings that yes, HER96 really captures this activity. And this is nicely shown in the video, which many of you have maybe seen already earlier. So this is a bar walking test for motor coordination. The first one was just a normal aged mouse. The second one has the induced pathology, and the pathology has exactly these different features that I showed, the vicious cycle going on, and it results in a very clear motor phenotype, so struggling with the motor coordination. And then the third mouse here has the induced pathology, but has been treated with HER96. And yes, as you can see very clearly, we have been really able to affect the symptoms, so we have been able to break down the vicious cycle and improve the symptoms and improve or increase the amount of dopamine in the brain region. With HER96, as mentioned, we have completed phase 1 program. We had 2 studies. First, we did a phase 1A clinical study in healthy volunteers. It was a single ascending dose study with 6 different dose levels, and here we established safety in healthy volunteers. The pharmacokinetics, so the behavior of the compound in human body, and also we demonstrated efficient brain penetration. Then we conducted a phase 1B clinical trial, where for the first time HER96 was administered into Parkinson's patients. The treatment was for 4 weeks, 2 subcutaneous administrations per week. Here again, we showed very nice safety profile. We further studied the pharmacokinetics. We also established very efficient brain penetration in Parkinson's patients. And we were able to, based on these data, to select the dosing for phase 2. And as already mentioned, we are currently still waiting for the biomarker data to be completed. And there, actually, what the objective is to demonstrate the biological response to HER96 dosing. So preferably in biomarkers on individual or pathway level, in such a way that we know that it's linked to mechanism of action and also linked to the findings in preclinical settings. Then we are at the same time, we are planning for phase 2 efficacy trial. We expect the phase 2 to be started by the end of the next year. Of course, still pending for partner or financing for that. But then we also want to start exploring HER96 in other indications, as the basic biology is very common with other neurodegeneration or aging-related indications. And related to the resourcing of phase 2, we are really deeply or intimately looking at partnering. We have obtained a lot of interest from the pharma based on these phase 1B data, and of course, the coming biomarker data will be also key for this. And we are going to JP Morgan meeting in early January to continue these discussions. We are looking at different potential partnering models. So far we are in a way open and let's see how it goes. But we are also at the same time looking at potential equity financing and non-dilutive financing. On that side, good to remind you that we already have a good level of external validation of HER96 and the biology. So the phase 1B was financed by a consortium of Michael J. Fox Foundation, Parkinson's UK. But in addition to that, we also have an investment commitment from EIC funds, so they can invest equity into the company. They still have almost 12 million to be deployed to Herantis. So basically, this was, in a way, the summary of Herantis, and I really want to emphasize that we believe that HER96 is a potentially game-changing therapy that really can become the first disease-modifying and neurorestorative treatment for Parkinson's disease. All right, thank you. And then I guess we'll continue with Q&A.
Thank you, Antti, and welcome to the Q&A session.
Thanks.
You already mentioned a little bit about the biomarker data release and analysis, but maybe it's worth it to go through it again. So what are you extracting from that data when it comes out? What is the meaning for you?
Yes. So in preclinical settings, we of course have very thoroughly analyzed what is going on a tissue level and cellular level in the animal models, and we know what kind of changes we see as what would be in a way the starting point for those changes that will then result eventually into, let's say, clinical or symptomatic or disease modification improvements. And now in clinical samples, we want to show that yes, we have started exactly the same changes as what we have seen in preclinical settings, and what are in a way based on our modeling those ones that we should see in patients as well. And if we can do that, it of course decreases the risk of failure, because we can show that yes, we have initiated a cascade that hopefully and potentially will eventually result in clinical improvement of the patients.
So it's not efficacy signals, but it's kind of signals of the drug doing what you would like it to do.
Exactly. That's the meaning. Yes. We need to remember that the phase 1b clinical trial was only 1 month treatment, and for a chronic disease like Parkinson's disease, which is slowly progressing, we should not expect to see an efficacy signal within such a short period of time, but showing that we have, in a way, started the biological process, that will be a strong signal for partnering.
Great. Then you recently reported on a 6-month preclinical toxicology study. So can you recap what was done and what were the results?
Yeah, so we have earlier, of course, completed a 28-day tox study. That was a requirement for starting the phase 1 program. Going towards phase 2, when we expect to have either 6 or 12 months treatment of Parkinson's patients, we of course need to have a longer toxicology program in preclinical settings. And this is exactly the 6-month study. So we had one animal species, rats, where we studied 6 months dosing, and of course the objective is to show that it is safe and well tolerated, and this is what we were able to show, that the results were very well aligned with the 28-day tox data. So everything is cleared for starting a clinical trial in efficacy trial, 6 months or 12 months dosing with HER96.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. Then about the upcoming phase 2 trial. So you don't have the exact plans announced yet on it, but as I understand, the duration of the study and follow-up time of the patients will be relatively short, maybe 6 months, like in your animal trial, or 12 months or something like that. But the Parkinson's disease takes a little bit or a long time to develop. So how do you balance this kind of relatively short-term trial to the challenge of showing efficacy, which would benefit from a longer trial? So what's the trade-off and balance here?
That is exactly the very good question that I think Herantis and the whole industry is currently, in a way, considering how to balance between the selection of the patients, the duration of the study, the number of patients, and then the primary endpoint and other endpoint assessments. And there, I think, there are a couple of key things. How to select the right patients so that we have as homogeneous patient population in the treatment arm and placebo arm as possible, and how we characterize the baseline characteristics so that we can actually have the possibility to see a change. And as you said, rightly so, that 6 months or 12 months, they are still relatively short period of time for Parkinson's disease. So we need to have a measurable change expected during that time. And there, the right endpoints comes into play. Traditionally, it has been a clinical endpoint in all the symptomatic trials. So it will be like neurologist assessment at the clinical observation how the motor functions are developing. However, the industry is currently moving towards having digital assessments, so either a smartphone-based or a wearable device that monitors the symptoms either passively or then by using active tasks. And this is, of course, something that we are currently looking at, what would be the best outcome measure so that we can optimize both the patient, the size of the patient population and the duration of the study. And there, of course, we need to also understand what is the biomarker signal and what is the time frame of when we see the biomarker signal in the phase 1b data, so that we can predict how long study we should have in phase 2 in order to see a clinical benefit in in that study.
Do you think the biomarkers can serve as an endpoint, or is it more for the partnering discussions?
Biomarkers, for us, it will be an important tool for designing the phase 2, exactly the kinetics. It will also be a risk mitigation factor for partners and possible also for investors. We are not expecting to have a very fixed biomarker endpoints yet in phase 2, the next phase 2 trial, but it is possible that we have a hypothesis that we will test in phase 2 so that we can use them later on, for example, in pivotal trials.
And the digital tools you mentioned, are they the kind of tools that are already being used, or have they been used in other trials?
Yes, there are many platforms that have been used in Parkinson's trials and in some other indications as well. There is currently one phase 2 clinical trial in the US that has a primary endpoint based on active smartphone-based assessment of motor symptoms. The company is called Neuron 23. But there are basically all the studies that are currently involving disease-modifying therapies. They have a digital measurement platform somewhere in their endpoints. So this is definitely something that is widely used, and I expect that, let's say, within the next 5 to 10 years, we will also see digital endpoints as regulatory endpoints in either Parkinson's disease or other neurodegenerative diseases.
Great. And you already talked a little bit about the funding for phase 2, but maybe we can go through that again. So you have ongoing partnering discussions, and the biomarker data will also be a part of that. So how do you see the timeline and the position you are in for those negotiations?
I think our position in those discussions is really strong. If you look at the competition currently, there are maybe a handful of compounds in phase 2 or going into phase 3 development. So actually the pipeline is pretty dry. However, the unmet clinical need is high, and the market opportunity is huge. So we have got really high interest on phase 1b data and of course the previous data as well. But of course the time will tell whether the phase 1b data alone is enough to trigger a partnering agreement, or if the partnering agreement terms that might be available for us are sufficiently well that it justifies going forward with those. And that's why we are also looking at equity financing at the same time. So we are not in a way in a situation that we don't have any options. We want to have now the options open. And of course during this spring, Q1, Q2, that's the time of finding the let's say the practical possibilities, and then decide what is the best way going forward. And on the partnering side, as I have mentioned in many previous presentations as well, we are looking both at the global partnering, but also more regional partnering. That could also be a good way of financing phase 2 program.
Yes, and I guess the phase 1 results are kind of very solid in those terms for undertaking the discussions. it seems to me that since last summer or during this autumn, the financing activity, at least in the US, has picked up, and there's more M&As, more licensing deals. Do you see that kind of uplift in Europe and in your area?
Absolutely, we see that. So I think the improvement in the biotech financing has started. It started with bigger deals. If you look at what is happening in US currently, there are like financing deals between 100 and 500 million US dollars. Not so many IPOs yet in US, so they have been like established companies having like on market utilities. However, my assumption and based on my discussions with several US banks is that IPO activity will start picking up, and also the number of deals will be increasing during the next spring, and it has already started. So I think there will be a keen interest to find good opportunities. And moreover, there have been a couple of very big M&A deals during the autumn overall in drug development, and it means that there are certain investors who have quite a bit of liquid money to be deployed to other companies as well.
Okay, so let's take the final question. You mentioned the pipeline for Parkinson's being quite dry, but are there some positive or interesting examples that you would lift from Parkinson's research or other neurodegenerative research that is kind of good or interesting signals? Something that has happened during this year, or maybe some readouts you are expecting next year?
Yeah, I think it's a good signal that Roche is going forward with their immunotherapy against alpha-synuclein aggregates. It means really that big pharma is interested in heavily invest in Parkinson's disease development. And we see that only as a positive signal. We don't, in a way, see that as that we would be in a competition with Roche. I think if they can prove to be efficacious and they can be they prove that they can continue efficient development in phase 2, it is also very beneficial for Herantis. And based on, in a way, mechanistic thinking also, it might be a good opportunity also to combine Herantis, HER96 and such immunotherapy then going forward when these new disease-modifying therapies are on the market.
Thank you very much for the discussion and presentation, and good luck for the next year.
Thank you.
All right, dear viewers, thank you very much for joining tonight's Inderes Life Science Night, and looking forward to talking to you again in the next events, and please read our latest analysis and comments on inderes.fi and .com.